The British monarchy is different from the other monarchies in Western Europe in being an international monarchy, with the Queen being head of state of over a dozen other countries around the world.
On my 21st birthday, I am 6,000 miles from the country where I was born. But I am certainly not 6,000 miles from home.
At the centre of the argument for the monarchy in this country is the Commonwealth. The Queen made it her life mission to fight for this institution. She's famous for it. She's deeply respected for having kept this institution together.
Welcome to the Katella Bubble. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you so much to everybody who has been supporting my show. So let's get into it. This is meant to be the final episode of my 3-part series called Harry and Meghan 3 Stories. So when I originally created the idea for Harry and Meghan 3 Stories, I thought it was just going to be me making one video talking about 3 stories that I thought of when I watched the Harry and Meghan docuseries. So there's actually footage of me telling this story back from December when I first came up with that idea. Roll the clip. Keep in mind that the video is probably really shit. If you don't know anything about the Thai government, all you need to know is basically that it's a similar system to the UK. It's a constitutional monarchy. They have a parliamentary system, they have a prime minister. So I had planned to talk about this story all the way back in December, but I realized that I needed like a little bit more time to do more research on this topic, and I really wanted to think more carefully about how I presented this story and how I presented Thai history, Thai culture, and my life in Thailand. So that's why it's taken me all the way up to now to actually put something together. But for a quick table of contents, what we're going to be talking about today is the concept of monarchy. And in order to examine the concept of monarchy away from the British royal family context, we're going to be doing a deep dive today into another constitutional monarchy, namely the Thai monarchy. Now you might be like, why is this lady talking to me about Thai history? We'll get to that in a bit. But I figure by looking at a royal family that I assume a lot of people in my audience don't know a lot about, and a family that doesn't have the same like pop culture presence as the British royal family, might help us to examine some of the themes of monarchy and some of the similarities between the two families, while also sort of distancing ourselves from a lot of controversies related to the British royal family by instead looking at them through a different family's lens. So firstly, I'm going to be talking about my story and my life in Thailand for a little bit. We're going to be looking at the history of the Thai monarchy, some similarities between the Thai monarchy and the British monarchy, and finally, we're going to be looking at how the British royal family is making a sharp turn into some dangerous territory, and what we should stay vigilant on. So let's just dive right into it, shall we? All right, today I'm going to be giving a presentation called The Briefest History of the Monarchy and What We Can Learn About Royalty by Katella Bubble. For anyone not in the know, I'm a teacher. Though currently I'm now in the good old US of A, I actually spent 2 years working in Thailand. I had previously visited Bangkok and Chiang Mai in 2017, and my partner and I moved there in 2019 and stayed until 2021. So first things first, this is my timeline of when I was in Thailand. I put a couple pictures in here as well as a little summary of my time. So I first went to Thailand in spring 2017 during the mourning for King Rama IX, only for like a couple weeks or so. And then in fall 2019, I moved to Thailand for work right after King Rama X's coronation. Now you might notice I was in Thailand smack dab in the middle of COVID. In fact, I was stuck in Thailand throughout COVID as the borders to the country closed up and made it incredibly hard to travel outside of the country. Then in winter 2020, which there isn't really a winter in Thailand, but you know, like January, February, March sort of time, COVID happens. Thailand closes its borders, and even for a short period of time, they closed their province borders, so we couldn't leave the province we were in. But that was only for like a couple months or so, and then around the summer of 2020, there was like free travel throughout Thailand with like social distancing guidelines and masks and stuff. Then in spring 2021, my partner and I leave Thailand. Oh, very sad. But of all the places to be during the earliest waves of COVID, Thailand was actually one of the greatest places to be. The early response to COVID from the Thai government worked pretty well in stopping the spread of COVID. So in fact, during those years I spent in Thailand, I was lucky that I was able to, within the borders of Thailand, travel quite a bit throughout northern Thailand, Bangkok, some of the islands, and really try to get to know the country a little bit better. Just a few pictures of me in Thailand, hanging out with some elephants. This is me at Loy Krathong Festival in Chiang Mai. Beautiful. We've got pictures of the White Temple in Chiang Rai. That's Black Temple in Chiang Rai. Oh, there's another picture of me at White Temple in Chiang Rai. This is at the Jim Thompson House in Bangkok. Very beautiful place. And then these are from like a couple of the islands. I can't really remember which ones these are on particularly. Oh, there's a picture of me in a mask because it's COVID time. And another picture of me wearing a mask at this temple, wherever this is. I clearly wasn't expecting to go to the temple because I'm clearly wearing one of those like sarongs that they give you when you're not dressed appropriately to go to the temple. Whoops. Thailand is a constitutional monarchy. Now, while I was there, I didn't talk much politics with my Thai friends. We'll get to why in a little bit. But while I was there, something pretty big politically did blow up. Something that I had some understanding of, but maybe not enough background knowledge to fully unpack. Throughout 2020 and 2021, protests, mainly organized by students, broke out in full force across the country. They called for three main things: dissolve parliament and remove the current prime minister, end intimidation of protesters, and draft a new constitution. However, there were definitely other stirrings afoot. Some were even calling for the reformation of the monarchy. Why did this all bubble to the surface in 2020? After all, Thailand was ruled by a beloved king, King Rama IX, for nearly 70 years. Only 4 years earlier, the country had been in a grief spiral at his passing. How did it get to the point that protesters were swarming the streets of Bangkok, demanding a level of systemic reform not seen in nearly a century? And of course, because I love to bring everything back to the British royal family, I want to examine some of the similarities between the difficulties of the Thai royal family and the British royal family. Though each country has different conceptions of monarchy, they are both very similar in how they have approached moving into the 21st century. And if you know anything about Thailand, that should raise a few alarm bells in the British watchers. So let's dive in. What does monarchy look like in Thailand, and what is its history? Since Thailand's monarchy is still an active part of its government, it has been a continuous presence in Thai history and culture. There are a lot of ways in which deference to the nation, and by extension the king, are culturally enforced. One way in which many tourists might be familiar is in how the national anthem is treated. The first thing I wanted to point out is one of the most obvious sort of nationalistic things that's common in Thailand is that in many public spaces, the Thai national anthem is played twice a day. And when it is playing, you are expected to stop whatever you're doing, stop moving, and stand still while it is being played. Though the lyrics of the anthem don't make reference to the monarch, it does reference Thai people as being ready to, quote, sacrifice every drop of our blood for our nation. But you know, that's like shit anthems say, you know? Aux armes, citoyens, formez. But for outsiders to Thailand, the fact that all people must, when hearing or singing the national anthem, stand in place can come across as a bit unusual. What's more unusual, however, is going to the cinema. Before any movie screening in Thailand, moviegoers must stand up in the theater to watch this glorious piece of propaganda. Before any film that is screened in Thailand, the King's Anthem plays, and there is a propaganda film that plays before every single screening. Just a slideshow of images of the king doing work and being coronated and things like that. I even found on YouTube this video that's a Thai propaganda video that explains why it's important to stand and pay respect to the king during the propaganda movie. I'm actually going to have us watch this together because I want to read out the subtitles, and I know the subtitles are not in the best English, so I want to kind of clean up the English so maybe people kind of understand what they're trying to say. So we have a bunch of Thai people, they're standing up for the propaganda piece. The important thing to know about the opening is that some of the people in the audience are like looking at their phone or like yawning or look pretty bored. One guy is literally like chewing on a straw and stuff. It's meant to be like people being like somewhat disrespectful, but like not overtly disrespectful. Many people may forget the reason. Why do we have to stand up to pay respect for the King's Anthem? I would like to ask you all to give me a minute. I would like to thank everyone here who paid respect to the King's Anthem. I believe that everyone here pays respect with their true heart, because we all know what the reason is. But I also believe that most of you here stand up just because you're following what other people are doing. I'm one of the Thai people who's curious. Why do we have to stand up every time during the Thai King's Anthem? But I found the answer. That makes me know the reason why we should stand up. Because I haven't seen Your Majesty sitting down. I've seen Your Majesty walk for long distances into the deep forest. I've seen Your Majesty get sweaty. I've seen Your Majesty's hands always holding tools. And I haven't seen anyone else be willing to sacrifice for the Thai people, just like Your Majesty has done. And how about you? Try to find the answer for yourself, so that we don't need to stand up just because other people are doing it. We don't need to love just because we want to follow other people. Try to find out what Your Majesty has done. And I believe that when the Thai King's Anthem is played, you all will know. You stand up to pay respect to Your Majesty. Just a normal person, like all of us. A person who doesn't have any special powers, who walks around the whole country to help the Thai people with full strength and heart. No other kings can do the same thing like Your Majesty did. Your Majesty, bhumibol adoyade. And then they all stand up and sing. It's literally, and then everybody clapped. And they do it all so passionately. Let's see if that rings true to me. If I learn what His Majesty has done, Let's just see. Walking around city centers, pictures of the king typically line long boulevards or billboards. Typically, any government building, school, mall, or medical facility will also have a portrait of the king, usually near the entrance. So I've also put up a bunch of pictures here of just some examples of the types of propaganda that is very common on the streets of Thailand. You can see here there are examples of just pictures of the king or the late king on billboards in the middle of city centers, in town squares. This is a billboard in like kind of a rundown sort of area. Billboards just everywhere, everywhere. Here's an example of the new king's billboard up next to the former king's billboard to commemorate his passing. Everywhere you go. You can see here is a boulevard lined with pictures of the former king. Just all of these little circles here are all different pictures of him. There's the current king right there. Here's a picture of just somebody's restaurant. You can see here they have two pictures right here of the late king and his queen. The royal family there is inescapable. Their images are all throughout different buildings, inside, outside. The king, like any other cult of personality figure, is omnipresent. But how did it get to that stage? How did Thailand's monarchy survive into the present day? Not only in a ceremonial capacity, but at the heart of government, to the point where Thai citizens encounter monarchist propaganda throughout their daily routine. Thailand, previously known as the Kingdom of Siam, has a long history that is so long and so complicated that I won't even dare to try to explain the vast majority of it. I am far too uneducated on the subject. Actually, I'm probably far too uneducated to talk about Thailand or the monarchy or anything. So forgive me if I make any mistakes, and please feel free to comment down below if you know more than I do, because I am always happy to learn and to grow, so please let me know if you know more than I do. Also, just a heads up, there are so many long Thai names coming up in this video, and I know my pronunciation is terrible, okay? So please forgive me. I'm going to try to do my best, but I'm probably gonna stumble through a lot of these names, but please just give me some space and grace, okay? Though what we know of today as Thailand wasn't always one unified nation, the first sign of a large United Kingdom, so to speak, was the Kingdom of Sukhothai in 1238. The divine right of these monarchs has always been connected to Thailand's Buddhist tradition. I know a lot of Westerners think Buddhism is just meditation and Om and connection to nature and all of that, but think of conservative Theravada Buddhism, more like Catholicism or the Church of England, for example. Theravada Buddhism. It is a relatively ancient and also quite conservative sect of Buddhism. The most conservative sects of Theravada Buddhism not only believe that there should be no nuns in Buddhism, but that you cannot become an enlightened being while also being a woman. Not to say that is every Buddhist out there, but Theravada Buddhists, specifically very extremely conservative Theravada Buddhists, still believe that. Buddhists believe in what is called the triple gem, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha is the enlightened being who discovered the Eightfold Path and Nirvana. The Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha is the community of Buddhists, but it's often used to describe the community of monks and sometimes nuns. I've also put some pictures here so you kind of get a sense of what these types of Buddhist monks look like and dress like in Thailand. They often wear these orange robes. Orange is a very significant color in Buddhism. The Sangha is typically used to talk about the monkhood of Buddhists, the monks and nuns that practice Buddhism. They kind of act like the clergy of Buddhism. So translated into more Christian terms, it's like saying that Christians believe in Jesus, the Gospels, and the clergy. The original idea of a Buddhist king was that the king was meant to rule in accordance with the Dharma, or the teachings. I got this off of Wikipedia. It says, although politics and religion were generally separated for most of Thai history, Buddhism's connection to the Thai state would increase in the middle of the 19th century following the reforms of King Mongkut that would lead to the development of a royally backed sect of Buddhism and increased centralization of the Thai Sangha under the state, with state control over Buddhism increasing further after the 2014 coup d'etat. Now, I know that's a lot of history we haven't gone over yet, but just keep that in your brain. But over time, this grew in scope from seeing the king as a man who enforced the Dharma to seeing the king as the leader of the Sangha, or the holiest of holy men in the sort of clergy. Think about it more like a pope sort of figure. To seeing the king as a semi-divine, enlightened being nearly equivalent to the Buddha. Thus, absolute monarchy in Thailand was solidified into Thai governance. Though there were different kingdoms in the area, and what was considered part of the main kingdom kind of ebbed and flowed over time, we'll skip over most of that for the sake of brevity to bring us to 1782 when the Chakri dynasty began. All right, let's get into the history. So obviously we're not going to go over the entire Thai monarchy because it stretches back for hundreds and hundreds of years. But I just put right at the front here the family trees. I'm going to be posting a link to this in the description, so if you want to look at the family trees up close a little bit more during the stories, feel free to look at them. This one on the left is in Thai, so I don't know how helpful it will be to you, but the one on the right is the family tree of King bhumibol, who we'll talk about later, and this one in the middle here is the family tree of King Rama X, or King Vajiralongkorn. Now, each king in the Chakri dynasty has his own name, but thankfully to make things simpler, they also take on the honorific title of Rama, and conveniently number themselves from the first Chakri king to the present. So I will mostly be referring to them by that title, but they also have their own names, so like, keep that in mind. I might be switching between their name and their honorific Rama number. Though at the beginning, still absolute monarchs, the Ramas are often credited with modernizing the government through the creation of councils, offices, and administrative bodies that had a more democratic flavor to them. Though Thailand is extremely proud of its history of avoiding colonial rule from Western countries, while other neighboring states like Burma, Cambodia, Vietnam, Macau, Hong Kong, India, all fell to colonizing forces. Thailand, or Siam at the time, was very focused on westernizing both its government and its society throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. For example, King Rama IV studied English while living as a Buddhist monk for 27 years and was supported by the British government in his ascent to the throne after his half-brother died with no heirs, specifically because of his pro-Western views. We're going to start with King Rama IV. King Mongkut. King Mongkut lived as a monk for 27 years of his life. There's actually a picture right here of him in his monkly garb. But as you can kind of see in this picture right here, he was kind of interested in emulating a more Western style of monarchy. You can kind of see by this sort of outfit here, it's got a little bit of a Thai style mixed with a little bit more of a European sort of military outfit. There's another example right here, and a picture of him with his son, who will be Rama V. We're going to get to that. You can see they're in kind of like military style uniforms that are very sort of European-esque. Here's a picture of him in a more like Thai style clothing, and a picture from him in his like Thai ceremonial clothing at his coronation. As king, he spearheaded many social reforms, which encouraged the study of Western sciences like geography and cosmology, which contradicted some previous religious teachings about the earth and other celestial objects. Very reminiscent of sort of Galileo sort of vibes, you know? He also introduced education reform and encouraged the propagation of Western literature. King Rama IV is also famous for being the king portrayed in Roger and Hammerstein's The King and I, which is loosely based on the real-life memoir of Anna Leonowens, who worked as a governess and English teacher in the king's court. So in 1862, King Mongkut, Rama IV, invited Anna Leonowens to the court to educate his children and wives. And Anna Leonowens then, we're going on a little bit of a tangent, Anna Leonowens, here's her a little bit younger, decides to write an account of her time in the Thai palace. So she writes, "The English governess at the Siamese court." If you actually click, you can read this for free on Project Gutenberg. Riveting. But this account was then later adapted into a novel called Anna and the King of Siam in 1944. Obviously, in the West, there's kind of a lot of like Orientalism, this intrigue about like what the Orient or the Far East is like. So Margaret Landon publishes this book, which becomes The King and I. So of course, first it was a musical on stage, then it was adapted into a movie with a pretty racist portrayal by Yul Brynner. And then it was also adapted, I didn't know this, into a 1999 movie with Jodie Foster and Chow Yun-fat. Her invitation to the palace to teach the king's wives and children in a sort of secular Western style was based on his want to modernize the kingdom and its ruling family. However, Anna's account of her time in Siam and the subsequent fictionalizations and adaptations of her story have led to the story in general being considered quite offensive to the Thai people, and most importantly, the monarchy. And it has subsequently been banned in its various forms from the country. They tend to think that they portray King Mongkut as a bit of a childish man baby, which they think is not very fair because he has this reputation of being a sort of modern intellectual in Thai society at the time, of really westernizing and modernizing the country. And so because of that, and for probably a bunch of other reasons, which we'll get into, pretty much all of these adaptations are banned in Thailand. Anna did, however, get a chance to teach the next in line to the throne, King Rama V, who continued to reform the monarchy by scaling back the rhetoric of being an enlightened being, and instead just focusing on being enlightened, as in espousing enlightened absolutism. King Rama V. King Chulalongkorn. Here he is here. This is his coronation photo. You can see here we're getting a lot more of that Western garb, a lot more of the military style uniforms of Western military. We got a picture here of the royal family. Look at this. This is like in the 1800s. They've got an actual picture of the Thai royal family. It's pretty amazing. But King Rama V is interesting because he is one of the first Thai kings to move away from this idea of the king being almost like a Buddha, like a divine being on earth sent to rule, and moving more towards this idea of enlightened absolutism, of taking the ideas of Enlightenment thinking from the West and incorporating that into the justification for ruling as a monarchy, a tactic of many absolute monarchs throughout history. Enlightened absolutism was an 18th century political idea to scale back all of the talk of divine right of kings as being the source of a leader's political might, and attempt to fold in more of these Enlightenment era ideals, such as the king gaining power through the social contract, or being duty-bound to support the good of the people. They also focused on Enlightenment-era interests, such as promoting scientific research and the arts, putting greater restrictions on religious institutions and the clergy, modern urban planning and development, and educational reform. Now, in the early 20th century, Thailand was following the same playbook. However, throughout the reigns of Rama V, VI, and VII, dissent against the monarchy was rumbling a little bit more clearly. Though these kings were still focused on modernizing the monarchy, they were slow to do so, and they still never made the big leap away from absolute rule, despite creating more secular institutions and government positions. Keep in mind, this is around the same time that, like, the Qing dynasty in China is collapsing. World War I is beginning, and connections between Thailand and the outside world, particularly British, were strengthening. By promoting Western ideals through bringing European scientific discoveries, art, literature, clothes, culture to the Thai people, they might have also accidentally highlighted Thailand's anachronistic governmental system and how disconnected it seemed from other nations at the time. Then moving on to King Rama VI, there is nothing really interesting about him except that he was the king during World War I. So we'll move swiftly on to King Rama VII, King Prajaripok. King Rama VII, King Prajaripok, was king from 1910 to 1935. Well, why was he only king until 1935? Because during his reign was the Siamese Revolution of 1932. During Rama VI's reign, even back in Rama V's reign, there were more and more Western ideas of democracy coming into Thai public consciousness. And so there were more and more calls to reinvent the Thai monarchy into a constitutional monarchy and limit the powers of the absolute ruler, to kind of like get with the times. The Siamese Revolution hits, which forces the king to sign a new constitution. The early 20th century ushered in some early coup attempts, more outward disparaging of the monarchy, and calls for a constitution. In 1932, due to more political opposition and calls to end absolute monarchical rule, Rama VII signed the first constitution of Thailand, which created the position of a prime minister and a national assembly. He continued to rule as king until 1935, when various disagreements between him and the new government, including not wanting to pay taxes on his personal fortune and potentially funding a rebellion against the new government, caused him to abdicate the throne and to flee to exile in England.
In the peaceful English setting of Knoll Park, Cranley, a king has signed away his throne. While King Prajadipok and Queen Rambabani of Siam have to all appearances been living quietly and happily in their Surrey residence, the momentous question of whether to rule or not to rule has been answered. The drama of abdication has been played out. Great secrecy has surrounded the settling of the problem, but now the die is cast. His Majesty has decided that he can be of no more help to his people.
Directly after the news of his abdication, the ex-King of Siam granted an interview to Pathé Gazette at his beautiful home at Cranley, Surrey. The ex-King was accompanied by his wife, and neither of them seemed to be distressed at the situation caused by this dramatic political move. The ex-king, who was educated at Eton, is very English in his views and strongly objects to Oriental extravagances.
This was so devastating that I have a picture of a newspaper article that states, quote, "Throne of Siam totters as tax-laden peasants revolt. Superstition decrees dynasty's collapse in 150th year." So that was kind of a low moment for the monarchy. We see he also did a little bit of a world tour here. Here he is hanging out with Hitler, as you do. Here he is meeting the Pope. Here he is hanging out with some Japanese officials, I think, on a boat. When Rama VII abdicated, the title passed on to his nephew, Ananda Mahidol, who is 10 years old and mostly grew up in Switzerland and was born in Germany. When Rama VII fled, that caused King Ananda Mahidol to become Rama VIII. There was a little bit of a problem though. King Ananda Mahidol was a child, and he wasn't living in Thailand at the time. He was living in Switzerland, which we'll go into a little bit more detail about in a bit. As you might have suspected, he was not the son of the previous king. He was his nephew. He was the son of Prince Mahidol Aduyare, who was a son of Rama V. And they had fled Thailand during the coup. And they had also lived abroad before that, but we'll get to that. So when he had to take over as king, he basically was a small child who was like, I don't want to do this because I'm a baby.
Pathé Gazette presents exclusive and intimate pictures of King Ananda Mahidol, new sovereign of Siam, 9-year-old nephew of the ex-king who has just abdicated. He's at a private school at Lausanne, Switzerland. And here he is taking his morning lessons with Madame Janet, his teacher. A few days ago, he was a carefree child, enjoying school and pranks as much as other boys of his age.
The 11-year-old Prince Ananda Mahidol, who is incidentally a keen winter sportsman, is to succeed his uncle, ex-King Prajadipok of Siam, whose decision to abdicate was recently made known. The news was broken to the prince while at school in Lausanne, and it is said that he was not too pleased. Accustomed to learning lessons and playing his games with his school comrades, the idea of returning to Bangkok, even to be a king, seemed most unsatisfactory. But Siam wants a king, so back he has to go, though he may return to Switzerland for his education after being crowned. The prince, who talks excellent French, answers a few questions.
Quoi? Est-ce que ça t'intéresse? Non. Pourquoi? Parce que ça m'intéresse pas. Qu'est-ce que tu voudrais faire? Jouer.
He was the first, but not the last, royal to be born on foreign soil, being 1, a child, and 2, not living in the country that he was supposedly the ruler of. The country was mostly run by regents. But listen, we're not here to talk too much about the Ramas, all the Ramas. For our story, there are 2 big players. So now, it's time to talk about
The young king of Thailand becomes part of a picture he knows from the movies. King Bhumibol Adulyadej has seen Broadway ticker tape receptions in the newsreel, and he tells newsmen he's very excited to find one actually being given for him.
The royal couple, who saw Sydney from the air as they flew in from Canberra, get a closer view when they visit the 26-story AMP building at Circular Quay.
Waiting for the arrival of the King and Queen of Thailand on their state visit. It's a long, long way from the teak forests, the golden pagodas, the white painted elephants and all the glitter and the glamour of Siam. And here, King Bhumibol Adulyadej, Thailand, and with him his most beautiful Queen Sirikit of Thailand, welcomed by Her Majesty. King, young, short, small figure, wearing a splendid sash in vivid saffron, the colour of Thailand.
รองประธานาธิบดีริชาร์ด นิกสันกับภริยาไปร่วมงานสำคัญนี้ด้วยเพื่อเทิดทูนพระเกียรติทั้งสองพระองค์ช้างทำโดยไม้สักงาช้างและประดับทองสัญลักษณ์ไทยเป็นของขวัญพระราชทานแด่ประธานาธิบดีซึ่งกำลังสวมเครื่องขัตติยราชอิสริยาภรณ์อันมีเกียรติรุ่งเรืองยิ่งมหาจักรีบรมราชวงศ์เครื่องอิสริยาภรณ์สูงสุดแห่งประเทศไทย
I thank you for your very kind words. The Queen and I are very deeply gratified. Ever since our arrival in this city, we have been very well received everywhere we went. We want to assure you that we are indeed grateful. And this royal barge is only a small token for admiration for the great city of London and its great people.
All right, so now we need to get into King Bhumibol, or Rama the Ninth. Who is King Bhumibol? So he's this guy here. I've put a few pictures of him at different ages, just so you can kind of follow who he is in the story and what he looks like at different time periods. As you can probably guess, Bhumibol Adulyadej was born December 5th, 1927, in the illustrious city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in Mount Auburn Hospital. Like, what the fuck? That's like right near me. Okay. There is actually a plaque in Cambridge marking an area as King Bhumibol Adulyadej Square. Kind of a little bit out of left field, but we can see here some pictures of the family growing up. His father, Mahitala Debresha Adulyadej Vikram, let's just call him the Prince Father, okay, was studying at Harvard at the time, and his brother Ananda was not yet the king, but would become, like I said before, King Rama VIII. In 1928, the family moved back to Thailand, but in 1929, the Prince Father died of kidney failure. So Princess Srinagarindha, the princess mother, brought her family back to Switzerland, where Bhumibol received most of his education. Keep in mind, that's right after the coup. So you can think about it as a little bit of an exile. We got a picture here of his mother with the three siblings, so with Ananda, Bhumibol, and their sister. I can't remember their sister's name, I'm sorry. Here's a picture of the two brothers as little kids, and some like cute little photos up here. Oh, here's Bhumibol with his father. Cute. So after he was born and after his father finished his degree, the family moved back to Thailand. But the next year, the Prince Father fell ill and died. They tried to stick it out a little bit in Thailand, but because of the coup in 1932, the Queen decides to take the family to Lausanne, Switzerland, where they live on and off basically until the 50s-ish. Here we can see them growing up, wearing their little ice skates, these tiny little suits, like ice skating suits. Adorable. Some pictures of them in beautiful Switzerland. The boys playing with like the Alps in the background on their ice skates, playing hockey. Just an adorable photo. Bhumibol even went to the University of Lausanne to study science and technology in 1945. You might have noticed that the Thai royal family conveniently sat out World War II in neutral Switzerland. While Ananda Mahidol was the king, King Rama VIII, and while the Pacific Theater was heating up massively. On top of all that, the Thai government was at this point essentially fascist. This was in fact around the time when the government actually changed the name of the country to Thailand to reflect their racialized idea of Thai people being a superior race in comparison to races like the Chinese. Though they declared neutrality in the war, Thailand was invaded by Japan hours after Pearl Harbor and later collaborated with the Japanese government, even declaring war on the UK and the US in 1942. But back to Bhumibol. So now let's talk about Bhumibol becoming king. I just thought I'd open with a bit of some cool photos of Bhumibol here. In his early photos, he's always wearing like sunglasses because he's pretty cool. And also he lost an eye, but we don't have time to get into that right now. One of the eyes is fake. That's all you really need to know. So you might think, obviously, in order for Bhumibol to become king, right, that must mean that his brother died. And you would be right. I don't think you're gonna expect how he died. On June 9th, 1946, King Rama VIII was discovered dead by gunshot wounds to the head in his bedroom.
Beautiful, age-old Bangkok, capital of Siam, and scene of a mystery regarding the gunshot death of its young monarch, King Ananda. The royal palace, impressive and ornate. But what was the cause that destroyed its king?
He was found shot with his own automatic, an American .45. Was it accident, suicide, or murder? The king's younger brother, 18-year-old Prince Bhumibol, succeeds to the throne.
Officials examine the Colt .45 which fired the bullet through his brain in these sleeping quarters. In the throne room, fabulously rich in gold and jewels, the dead monarch's remains are guarded by Buddhist priests.
Rumor says that he was put away because of his pro-American sympathies. Meanwhile, the ancient pomp and ceremonial continue in a Siam liberated from Japanese control at the end of the war.
Strangely, no one knows how it happened to this day. And there is like way too much controversy surrounding the investigation that we cannot get into at the moment. This is a map of the royal quarters where everybody was during the incident that came out during the investigation. Here's an X-ray examination of the king, basically saying that his whole skull was fractured and that a single bullet passed from the frontal bone in front slightly to the left side and passing through the intracranial contents to produce an opening in the occipital bone close to the external occipital protuberance. So basically this way. At the time, there was an inquiry that was started and it was expected for the Queen and for Bhumibol to testify, but it kind of turned out that they couldn't really decide whether they wanted to say that it was a suicide or whether to pin it on a bunch of courtiers. They ended up going with pinning it on a bunch of courtiers here. Here's a confidential telegram basically saying that Dr. Keith Simpson at the Home Office was inclined to believe that it was a murder. Here's another document where somebody says basically that they think it was murder. Here's King Bhumibol basically saying that it is murder, but we'll just never know what happened.
After so many years now, how do you believe that your brother died?
The investigation provided the fact that he died with a bullet wound in his forehead. And this thing is, it was proof that it was not an accident or not a suicide. But that doesn't know. But what happened is very mysterious because they immediately many of the evidence was just shifted, and then because it was political, so everyone was political, even the police were political. So it is a fact of that is not very clear. I only know what happened.
When you yourself were there and you ran along when everyone called.
When I arrived, he was dead.
However, we do know that the result was that Bhumibol was now king, specifically Rama IX. His first step as king was to go back to Switzerland and change his major to poli-sci. So at this time, King Bhumibol was studying at the University of Lausanne. He started by studying science and technology, but after his brother's murder, he changed his major to political science to prepare to become king. He also met who would become his future wife, Queen Sirikit, in Paris. I think she was like the daughter of an ambassador. Look at them, just beautiful. I love the Queen. Queen Sirikit just looks so beautiful. Look at this picture from like early on. It's just so romantic looking, isn't it? But in 1950, he came back to Thailand to officially be coronated.
Siam's 22-year-old king, Bhumibol, prepares for double ceremonies, marriage and coronation. In Bangkok, city of 500 temples and capital of prosperous Siam, world diplomats turn out in force. White elephants, symbols of state, stand guard outside the temple in which the U.S.-born king, successor to a brother who committed suicide 4 years ago, weds his distant cousin, 17-year-old Princess Sirikat Kitikari, on a day set by royal astrologers.
So let's meet the family, okay? So we've already mentioned Queen Sirikit. She is gorgeous. Look at all these photos of her. Oh, she's like dressed in these like 1950s like A-line dresses. Look at her wearing like this mink coat. Ooh. We got a little bit of like a Jackie O vibe with this hat going on here. And we've got their kids. They have 4 kids. So there's a random assortment of all of their cute little family photos. Look at this one with Vajiralongkorn in this like little military outfit. Very cute. I love this one here. There's like a black and white version up here and this color version. I love these little pleated skirts with the socks. Like, it's just so funny as well. Like, these 2 girls match and then Ubal Ratana doesn't match at all. All right, so we've got the eldest, Princess Ubal Ratana. Then we got second eldest, Prince Vajiralongkorn, who will become King Rama X. So keep it in your brain. Then slide over here. We've got third child, a daughter named Princess Shrinhorn, and the final child, Princess Chwalabhorn, who isn't very important for our story. Hopefully seeing those pictures of them as adults can help you like make sense of who they all are as children in there. Like, to me, it's like so obvious, like Ubal Ratana, Vajiralongkorn, Shrinhorn, and Chwalabhorn. They look just like their adult counterparts. It's hilarious. Though there were many more military dictatorships under his reign.
King Bhumibol was the country's symbol of national unity. Since the transition to a constitutional monarchy in 1932, the country has had 20 constitutions, 29 prime ministers, witnessed 19 attempted coups, 12 of them successful.
Rama IX had been working hard to fashion himself as a modern king. Getting on to like the early reign. So when King Bhumibol first shows up, it's under Plek Khibon Songkram's military dictatorship. So remember, it's a constitutional monarchy, so King Bhumibol has a purely ceremonial role under this previous arrangement. And we'll see that later on during the next military dictatorship under Sarit Tanarat. King Bhumibol privately supports Sarit's coup. And I guess kind of in exchange, there's a little bit of a laxness on the role of the monarchy, and he's given more public ceremonies, charity events, traditional festivals, and he also schedules more audiences with the prime minister and the cabinet. So he's getting a little bit more involved in the political side. And then the outcome of this is that King Bhumibol sort of fashions himself as a sort of like agricultural and industrial development king. Though some of the 1932 reforms had been stripped back to give the king more power, he wanted to showcase a more ceremonial side to the role, and also maybe a little bit of a celebrity side, if you will. A little bit of glitz and glamour. Bhumibol had always had a fascination with photography growing up, and the technological revolutions in disseminating information allowed for the better spread of images of the king and his family.
Here's Bangkok's new television station, and you must admit that an opening ceremony in Thailand is different. The balloons go up and it's unveiled. The station's run by the Thai Army, but all the equipment's been provided by a British company. so east meets west on the studio floor.
He and his family, for lack of a better word, just looked so cool. Like, so cool. They look so chic. Like, every single picture of them from the early reign is just, like, so stylish and cute. The king was also famous for loving jazz music, and he played the saxophone, which we all know that playing the saxophone just makes you look politically cool, right? The introduction of King Bhumibol into Thai life was kind of like a soft reboot of the monarchy. Thailand had not had a monarch permanently living in the country for nearly 15 years. And earlier Thai monarchs did not have the same technologies to solidify their image in the public consciousness. The king was now ruling during a time of radio, television, film, photography, and faster news media. Other than official portraits and maybe the occasional like British Pathé film, previous monarchs were rarely seen in public life. But by the 1950s and early 1960s, King Bhumibol had a much clearer understanding of how to portray the family. After all, only 3 years after his own coronation would be the coronation of another young royal who would become beloved and usher in a new way of marketing the monarchy. The king focused attention on his public works projects in a move that is eerily similar to the publicity pivot of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert a couple generations earlier. The king and his family could focus on promoting infrastructure and agricultural projects and receive praise for being a development king.
The world's longest reigning monarch tackled many of Thailand's biggest problems. He spearheaded thousands of rural developmental projects to improve the lives of desperate farmers. Through initiatives such as developing water management to introducing new methods of farming, he revolutionized Thailand's agricultural system.
From the people's perspective, it was as if Bhumibol was ushering in this golden age through his benevolent rule. I mean, some of these are later on, but a lot of his reign starts to be focused on these public works projects. You can see a lot of them are agricultural in nature, often in rice paddies, rice planting, which is a major crop. He's also just like meeting the public. He's really going on a lot of publicity tours, taking photos. This one's a pretty famous one. He's like comforting a very old, it looks like a very sick man. We can see here he really loved like taking these photos with like these giant like maps or plans or things like that to make it feel like, you know, he was really doing the work out there, you know? Oh, here's another cool photo, I guess, of the king literally being carried by one of his subjects. So one way I've kind of organized this timeline is above the sort of line is what's kind of going on inside the country, and underneath the line is kind of what's going on outside of the country. During the early reign, massive world tours all throughout the 50s and 60s. You can see they were just meeting everybody, going everywhere. We got some pictures with Eisenhower. I think this picture of all of them near the waterfront, I think that's on somewhere in a European tour. They met Elvis. Like, look at this. They're like all wearing their cute little pillbox hats. Look at them on the cover of Time magazine. They went to Disneyland. They met Walt Disney. Like, look, that's Ubal Ratana and Vajiralongkorn going to Disneyland just for funsies. Here's Ubal Ratana and Bhumibol competing in a race, I think. And they both got first place, which is seems a little bit rigged, but okay. Meeting, I can't remember which royal family this is, another European royal family. They met all the royal families, basically. They went to Madrid, they went to London, they went to New York, they went to California. Here they are, I think this is like in Malaysia? This is them sending Vajiralongkorn off to school in England. We'll get to that. Oh, here they are with our faves. We got QE2 and Prince Philip right here, just living their best life. Though the monarchy had previously struggled with unpopularity of being, you know, absolute rulers, and had spent nearly 100 years trying to downplay the idea of being enlightened beings or like a Buddha, Bhumibol's popularity skyrocketed him to a nearly divine status.
Meditation is a process that is very important because first you must have concentration. You must concentrate your mind so that you have a peace that is perhaps not lasting, but a peace in which you can see many things. To have the peace, the real peace. And then with this peace, you will be able to see very clearly.
Usually my husband would come in earlier than I would and meditate, really meditate, because he could control his breathing and he could really concentrate. But I cannot concentrate and meditate yet. I'm learning. I only pray.
How do you both reconcile your faith in Buddhism, with its emphasis on not taking life, no bloodshed, with your role as head of the armed forces of an army and its campaign at the moment?
This is a problem. This is a problem, but when a soldier holds a gun, this gun should be intended to shoot. And shoot what? Shoot an enemy. That is a living being. But if he holds that gun with the intention of guarding, preserving his country, with this intention, he is not sinful.
So let's go to the 70s. Uh-oh, what's going on up here? So in 1973, there's what's called the Thai uprisings. So around October, there are a few students that are arrested for distributing pro-constitution literature. They weren't actively against the monarch, they weren't against bhumibol or the monarchy in general, but just about changing the constitution. They were really mad at the military dictatorship angle of it all. And so they really wanted to see if constitutional reform was on the table. But of course that is a threat to the monarchy implicitly. But it led to, a couple days later, the Thammasat University massacre. The day of great tragedy over here. Nearly 100 left-wing protesters are killed and hundreds more were wounded by police.
ไม่ได้มีส่วนเกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องทั้งสองทั้งสามรัฐบาลควรจะปล่อยตัวให้ไปโดยเร็วที่สุดที่การกล่าวอ้างว่านักศึกษาตกเป็นเครื่องมือของนักการเมืองโดยไม่ได้ระบุหลักฐานและตัวบุคคลให้เป็นที่แน่ชัดนั้นจะมีผลเป็นการทำลายเจตนาอันบริสุทธิ์ของนักศึกษาทั่วไปที่หวังดีต่อบ้านเมืองและเป็นอุปสรรคต่อการสร้างความรับผิดชอบ
ในบริเวณถนนราชดำเนินตลอดทั้งสาย
We can see some pictures here. This is the uprisings, probably at their biggest. This monument you'll see a lot of. It's actually a monument to the concept of democracy, which is a pretty cool place to protest. We see some of the student organizers here. These were some of the key student organizers. We do see here a lot of them holding up pictures of the king and queen, but I think mostly reverently. Actually, part of the uprisings is that they end up going to the palace to sort of ask King Bhumibol his opinion, I guess thinking that he was benevolent and would have their best interests at heart. He basically told them to disperse, which they listened to. Then, warning, this is a bit graphic. We have photos from the massacre. Students cowering, tanks in the street. So not great times in Thailand. Let's look how we doing on the world stage. So pretty much after their first big world tour, the royal family pretty much never leaves the country ever again. They don't do any other like big world tours. Like obviously they go to pop by the things here and there, but they don't go on like big world tours anymore. But you still see, obviously, they're fulfilling their duties, you know, taking pictures, talking to world leaders. Oh, here we have her, Queenie. But the biggest thing we got to talk about is Princess Ubul Ratana is out. She literally pulled a Harry and Meghan before Harry and Meghan ever did. She met a classmate at MIT named Peter Jensen and married him. So July 25th, 1972, Princess Ubul Ratana marries a Westerner named Peter Jensen. Furious at her for marrying her Farang husband, Bhumibol stripped her of all of her royal titles. For 26 years, she lived in the United States with her husband and children under the name Julie Jensen. We see here, I couldn't really find a picture of the guy that she married, but this is her a little bit later on, and so the 90s, hanging out with her kids. They look very cute. Now don't worry, she's gonna pop up later in the story. And so because of this, in December of 1972, King Bhumibol announces that Vajiralongkorn will be the next heir. Thai monarchy has always operated a little bit differently in that the current monarch pretty much always has to sort of name the successor. They don't really have like an automatic system to know who the heir is going to be. So even though it was kind of obvious that Vajiralongkorn would be the heir as a son, this kind of came off as a big fuck you. And some of the way that King Bhumibol had been acting before this and some of the changes to the laws and somewhat seemed to signal that Bhumibol was potentially considering Ubul Ratana to be the heir. So yeah, it definitely came off as a big fuck you. But you can see here, this is the official ceremony. He's officially announced as heir. All right, let's go to the 80s. 80s and 90s, let's go. How's it going? Yeah, it looks like we have a little bit more political instability. Things were pretty okay during the 80s, but in the early 90s, in 1991 to be exact, there is a coup d'etat. So the military attempts a coup, and King Bhumibol approves of the coup and criticizes the previous administration. In response, in 1992, is what's called Black May. So mass protests erupt in Thailand and hundreds of people are killed and injured by police in Bangkok. In response, the king brought two opposing leaders together to end the conflict. It was broadcast on television. Clip is here, play it.
Comme de mauvais élèves, à genoux devant le roi Bhumibol, le général Suchinda Kraprayoun, devenu la bête noire de la rue, suivi de celui qui voulait le renverser, le général Shamlong Srimuang, tout juste sorti de prison. Entre ces deux hommes, sermonnés par leur souverain, il y a au moins 40 morts et 600 blessés après 4 jours et 4 nuits d'émeutes à Bangkok. C'est la deuxième fois en 46 ans de règne que le roi Bhumibol intervient directement dans les affaires de son pays. La dernière fois, en 73, il y avait eu 100 morts.
You can see here it was pretty brutal. Here's a newspaper from the time. City braces for more riots. Riots, the language of the unheard. And what's going on in the royal family life? They're still kind of kicking around, kind of doing their duties, you know, looking nice. Oh, look, playing the saxophone, like father, like son. Oh, yeah, the Queen. Queen comes again to visit, of course, yeah.
Thaksin Shinawatra, a former police officer turned telecommunications billionaire, was voted in as Prime Minister. His supporters believed that unlike former politicians, he would keep his promises, that he was a man of action. Thaksin was re-elected in 2005, a landslide victory, making him the first ever democratically elected Prime Minister to complete a full term in office. But he was forced from power less than a year later in a military coup. Opponents of Thaksin accused him and his family of pocketing more than $2 billion in questionable dealings. He was also accused of using his position to evade paying taxes. Allegations Thaksin staunchly denies.
It's quite
But many believe it was his immense popularity that was the real motive behind the coup. The king was quick to approve the coup. He granted its leaders an audience, signaling his support.
King Bhumibol became a beloved figure not only for bringing a young, fresh face to the royal family and espousing the same Western ideals that the monarchy had been promoting since King Rama IV, but also due to his long reign. At the time of his death in 2016, he was the longest reigning monarch of all time, only later surpassed by Queen Elizabeth II herself. He was also one of the first Thai monarchs to have what looked like a standard nuclear family, which I think made him look really relatable. Previous kings often had had multiple wives and concubines, and by extension, dozens of children. For example, Rama V had 153 consorts and 4 wives over the course of his reign. But Bhumibol portrayed himself more as a family man, with 1 wife, Queen Sirikit, and 4 children, 3 daughters, 1 son. Gone were the days of monarchs having gaggles of children with multiple women, until...
So these yellow-shirted ultra-royalist acolytes have been waiting in the sun for 7 hours just for this moment. In very stark contrast to the mood in the protests that have engulfed his kingdom.
Anyone who, like the Thai king along with the military junta, brutally knocks down the democracy movement shouldn't be rewarded with a visa for a luxurious long-term stay in Germany by the federal government.
Happy birthday to you. His full name means adorned with jewels or thunderbolts.
ธิดาวชิราลงกรณ์ ณ อยุธยา เฝ้าทูลละอองธุลีพระบาท ทูลเกล้าทูลกระหม่อมถวายกรวยกระทงดอกไม้ธูปเทียนแพร แด่สมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัว
His net worth estimated to be between $30 billion and $70 billion.
He wore it out in public because he felt pretty damn good about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just own up to it. There's nothing wrong with it.
And what's the point of being king if you can't go around in a crop top?
Rumors of gambling, womanizing, and associating with illegal businesses reportedly plagued the prince's reputation.
Some of his ex-wives have tragic lives. Is it true that he fed one of his ex-wives from a dog bowl? Why was his third wife arrested? And why does now she live without any amenities? And how does his current wife have to put up with his many concubines?
These people love you, but what do you say to the protesters who've been on the streets who want reform?
I have no comment. No comment. We love them all the same. We love them all the same. We love them all the same.
Back in the early 70s, it was assumed that King Rama IX would declare his daughter, Princess Ubal Ratana, the heir apparent to the throne. Not only was she very active in the political and social scene, she was well educated, having studied biochemistry at MIT. Princess Ubal Ratana marries a Westerner named Peter Jensen. King Bhumibol is furious and cuts her entirely off, and she's stripped of all of her titles and patronages. This meant up next was the second eldest and only son of King Bhumibol, Vajiralongkorn. Now it is time for King Vajiralongkorn, or Rama X. So remember him? There we go. Hey, it's Vajiralongkorn again. So we're going to skip most of Vajiralongkorn's childhood because we kind of already went over it, but I thought I would just include a few more pictures of him as a little boy. Look at him in his little shorts and this like little schoolboy's outfit. Here he is with his dad wearing the cool sunglasses. We even have this newspaper article about the king like giving him like a haircut. It's part of like a ritual to repel evil. Now Vajiralongkorn was not like his sister. Unlike his other siblings, he was sent to boarding schools in jolly old England. He wasn't very gifted academically. shall we say. In fact, he did so poorly at school, there were even difficulties with him getting a diploma on time. Prince Vajiralongkorn went to school in the UK. He was basically sent to boarding school for the 50s and 60s. Here he is, like kind of a little boy. Prince really struggled academically in school. It was a little bit of an embarrassment for the family. It took them a while to actually figure out a way for him to matriculate. I have this lovely telegram here, which states, quote, "However, Des still considers that Crown Prince should not attempt to matriculate this year because A, he would virtually be attempting to pass a 2-year course in 2 months, and the B is redacted." So for his tertiary education, he studied at various military academies in Australia before becoming an officer and a pilot in the Thai Royal Army. So that means that Prince Vajiralongkorn is going to military school. He goes to the King's School in 1970 and Royal Military College in 1972. Here he is as sort of a young man learning military stuff. Pretty much every picture of him, he's going to be in military stuff of some kind.
What are the personal pressures on you in your role as Crown Prince?
I don't know what it's like because I have been born the first second of my life. I'm a prince. It's difficult to say what is it like to be a fish when you are a fish, or what is it like to be a bird when you're a bird. If you go and ask them, you know, it's difficult. Because they don't know what it's like not to be a fish or a bird.
Here we are, his soldiering stuff. There he is in Australia training. This is a letter that Vajiralongkorn wrote, I guess for like the school magazine. A quote from the article: "My stay at the King's School has given me an opportunity to get to know Australians well. And as we all have to learn more and more how to live together in this part of the world, I am grateful for this opportunity. Through this experience, certain words like neighbor and Australia have come to have much more meaning for me. The word Australia is no longer just a word, but brings up memories of gum trees, wattle in bloom, dust, floods, suburbs, outback mineral resources, and Australians." I mean, that's a list of things in Australia, for sure. To be honest, nobody really cares about Vajiralongkorn's career. Before ever reaching the throne, he had a big reputation. Thai commentators might call him a bit of a Don Juan or a womanizer, but what Vajiralongkorn really was a huge fucking liability to the monarchy's goodwill, and allegedly a huge asshole. And if that previous conversation hadn't gotten the video banned in Thailand by now, it sure is now, because we've got a big tangent to talk about right now. The term lese majeste comes from the French for a crime against the crown. From Wikipedia, lese majeste is an offense against the dignity of a ruling head of state, traditionally a monarch, but now more often a president, or the state itself. Lese majeste laws are any laws which criminalize or penalize any offense against a head of state, most often a monarch. Around the world, when most nations were run by monarchs, lese majeste laws were common legal mechanisms to chill dissent against the monarchy. Many lese majeste laws often focus on penalizing critiques and or personal insults lobbed at the head of state, such as jokes, memes, writing or saying any anti-monarchist sentiments in public, or anything which a leader deems to be defamatory in nature. In Thailand, criticizing the monarch or any family members of the monarch is illegal under its own lese majeste law. The law currently reads, "Whoever defames, insults, or threatens the king, queen, the heir apparent, or the regent shall be punished with imprisonment of 3 to 15 years. It is one of the most severe lese majeste laws on earth. It is also one of the most regularly enforced lese majeste laws, and that has only increased in recent memory since the latest military junta began in 2014. But even before the uptick in modern use, it has always been the law of the land and has influenced how monarchs have been reported on and portrayed in Thailand. So although it is definitely true true that many Thai monarchs, including Bhumibol, have been organically popular, you also have to keep in mind, especially if you read or watch anything about the family on the internet, that any perceived negativity about the family is punishable with imprisonment, which, if you can believe it, does have a chilling effect on the amount of serious critique of the family. Thailand's lese majeste laws are infamous in their strictness. What are some things that can get you imprisoned for lese majeste, or at least arrested? Writing a novel with a fictional crown prince that might be based on the family, that literally only sold 7 copies, posting a picture of King Bhumibol's favorite dog and mocking it. Ugh, I love this one. Thai man faces nearly 40 years in jail for insulting the king's dog. Bhumibol's dog, this dog right here, named Tongdeng, who is like his favorite dog. I think he actually wrote a book about the dog. The Thai royals like love their dogs. Questioning to a friend if a 16th century elephant battle had actually taken place because there was a king involved in the battle, making a satirical calendar with pictures of rubber ducks, which had been used at previous anti-monarchy protests, participating in a mock fashion show, which Amnesty International said was, quote, a satirical take on the political situation of the country, a peaceful public event akin to a street festival with music, food, and dancing. Participants should not be punished for participating in a peaceful assembly. True. Putting a hand over your mouth while making a speech at a protest to potentially signify that you feel silenced by the government, which is ironic. Of course, they've gone after Andrew McGregor Marshall, who's a British journalist. He's done a lot of coverage of the Thai royal family. They went after his wife as well, making small talk about politics in a cab. This guy, his brother basically like got into an argument with him and accused him of violating lese majeste because they got into like an argument about their dogs or something. It's always about dogs. But yeah, he spent literally like a year in a Thai prison because his brother accused him of lese majeste when it wasn't even true. And posting or liking posts on Facebook critical of the monarchy, including linking to a BBC article. Again, sharing more articles on Facebook. It's kind of like having a great firewall, but instead of having a great firewall, you just arrest everybody that shares negative stories on Facebook to create a great firewall. Seems like a little bit of a circuitous route, but who am I? But the even more sinister edge to these lese majeste laws is that they have been used to attack various political and social enemies of the royal family, even when they are not jokes, political attacks, or even anti-monarchy. Oh yeah, Thai printers refused to publish a New York Times edition over an article about the king. This happens quite frequently. A lot of times, certain editions of newspapers in Thailand will be banned due to how they depict the king or the royal family. This one was about discussing the king's ailing health, not even defaming him in any way or anything like that. WikiLeaks has shown that he was ailing at this time. This is the third wife of King Vajiralongkorn. Her parents getting arrested for lese majeste. I'm sure that's not a fun experience for them. Remember that mysterious gunshot wound to the head of Rama VIII? How do you investigate that if any potential suspicion falls onto any royal family members without potentially violating lese majeste laws? Articles alleging corruption from the family are often banned in Thailand for violating lese majeste. And even ambassadors to the country had been found to have potentially violated the laws just by critiquing the government and its policies. This is Thai's lese majeste law. This law is called Article 112. We can see here lots of pictures of Thais protesting lese majeste laws in the past. Look at all these pictures. These people got like 112 on their shirts crossed out. Abolish the Article 112. Freedom from lese majeste laws. Abolish lese majeste. This one's against lese majeste, but I love this one that just says, Christy Kenny, shut up. I wouldn't know what she said.
I'm Thai. Yeah. Yes, but I'm in the Denmark. But what is the problem of being Thai people? No, I'm just saying because I missed the point. The first thing you talk about that one of the men he shout in front of the president and he must go to the jail and then the human life or something like that. Yes. But do you know that in Denmark, just 2 days ago,
yes,
one person have just split in front of one of the member of the government.
Yes,
yes, he must go to jail.
Attack physically or just
this
only
is Denmark. No, everybody. If I spit in front of your face, everybody have the right. It's the same.
Yes.
I cannot just shout at you and put the bad word or something. No.
Words and physical attacks are very different. Words we can talk, right?
Yes, it's an equal.
It's different thing.
The king has the right to. We have the right to.
Yes,
if you
okay, I
happy
understand the
about
point,
that, how is the law in that country you live in?
Yes.
So happy by that. I'm in Thailand. I'm in Denmark.
No, you are in Germany.
In this place, something like that. So I don't think that what's called the law can be the same in the country.
Yes.
People is raised.
It's true.
We have the history. We have the history. We have the history. Everybody has the history. Thailand has been a long time.
Yes.
Can I answer your question, because I found it very important to ask that question, and I think the difference with a lese majeste law and the normal law that protects people from being verbally or physically abused is that the person who is attacked will be able to sue the other person. I mean, if Sarkozy is attacked by someone, he can always, as a person, go and say, I want to sue him, I want him to see him behind jail. But a lese majeste law, I mean, like in Thailand, anyone can just say that person accused our head of state and he has to go behind jail.
So I would like to add, because I'm a lawyer too. I'm a lawyer. There's one more difference. I think that if anyone insults another person, maybe the head of state, one really can discuss whether there could be a law that protects him in a special way. But still, we have these laws, too. In Germany we have a law like that. But there's one more difference. Of course, this formal difference is very important, but there's a material difference too. You have to offend the person. You really have to offend him badly. So it's an insult. If you call him that he fucks the animals, that's really an insult. But the difference with the lese majeste in Thailand, you can use this for any critic of the political system. You can construct, it's a way to silence critics, because anybody who says I don't like the monarchy because the whole system is corrupt and because it's manipulated and the king is just a marionette of the system, you go to jail for 20 years, you never get out. But this is not an insult. This is just the critics, maybe you don't like it. That's the difference. This is totally different if you spit in front of the president of Germany. It's not so nice. Maybe we can discuss whether he gets maybe a higher fine because he spits as a president than a normal person. We can discuss it. Maybe it's not good. But it's a totally different thing to Thailand. This lese majeste, your sacred lese majeste, is a political tool and trick to silence political opposition, and that is the main difference, I think.
So how does that factor into Vajiralongkorn's love life? So like we said before, he was named the heir apparent in the 70s, but a little bit later on in the 70s, we get his first marriage. So January 3rd, 1977, Prince Vajiralongkorn marries his cousin, Swamswali, who was 19 years old at the time. She looks really gorgeous in these pictures. Oh, they just look so beautiful. Vajiralongkorn's first wife, Swamswali Kitiakara, was his first cousin, whom he married in 1977 and had one child. However, pretty early on, Vajiralongkorn was engaging in an affair with a Thai actress named Yuvaida Saratsawadi. While still married to his first wife, the two had 5 children together throughout the 80s. That bliss was short-lived, my friends, because we gotta move on to wife number 2. This is Yuvaida Saratsawadi. So the prince started his affair with Yuvaida Saratsawadi pretty much in the late 70s, but it continued all throughout the 80s and a little bit of the early 90s. Here you can see her and their 5 children, their 5 secret children, I guess. Here they are again. her and his 5 children. It was either an open secret or not even a secret at all, and just not discussed due to lese majeste. Obviously, at this time as well, he is working in the Thai Air Force, so he learns to fly planes. Here he is, with his daughter in a plane, hanging out with his army buddies. Finally, in 1993, when all the cool royals were getting divorced, Vajiralongkorn divorced Soamsawali and blamed her entirely for the divorce in the court documents. And yet, due to lese majeste laws, Soamsawali was unable to mount any defense against Vajiralongkorn and his accusations. Now we get to the 90s. Okay, first we have to divorce Soamsawali. So in 1993, Prince Vajiralongkorn divorces Soamsawali. Due to lese majeste, she cannot defend herself from any accusations in court, so she's basically disgraced, kicked out, which leads him to marry Yuvadita. Pictured here. Look at the lovely couple. Don't they look so happy to be together? We got a little bit of foreshadowing here. Say hi to Fufu. He then married Yuvadita in 1994 after the first divorce had been finalized. The family wasn't too keen to publicize this marriage at first. I wonder why. And the queen wasn't in attendance, but somehow the love affair between the two that they had maintained since the 70s had soured. In 1996, just 2 years later, Yuvadita fled to the UK with her children. The prince decided to divorce her publicly by publicly shaming her and claiming that she was engaged in an affair, so she fled to the UK with all of their children, while Vajiralongkorn put up posters all over the palace proclaiming that she had committed adultery with another air marshal. The posters said, quote, "These 2 people have been declared persona non grata and expelled from the palace. If anyone sees them, they must be shunned. Anand, the name of the air marshal, has been expelled from his position. If he does anything else, he will be punished. The institution, in brackets, royal family, and Thai government do not want him to return." He then abducted his own daughter from the UK, brought her back to Thailand, and then stripped Yuvadita and her sons of their titles and diplomatic passports. A little bit of a fun fact, the daughter he abducted later became a badminton player and a fashion designer. Here she is. She looks gorgeous. Obviously, even if Yuvadita wanted to defend herself, lese majeste, once again, would mean that she would not be allowed to criticize Vajiralongkorn. In his personal life as well, in the early 1990s, he went to the Royal College Defense Studies in the UK, did a little bit more military training. Like I said, pretty much every single picture of him is going to be him in a uniform. Vajiralongkorn then set his sights on a lady-in-waiting named Shrashmi Suwadi. She had been working with him since the early 1990s, but they didn't marry until 2001. But yet again, oddly enough, the palace didn't seem too keen to announce their new marriage until right before Shrashmi gave birth in 2005. We got to get to the 2000s. So this is Shrashmi Suwadi. She was previously one of his bodyguards since about 1992. He obviously began a secret relationship with her, not surprised. They were married in 2001, but their marriage was not announced publicly until 2005, right before their son was born. Here's a picture of their son here. Look at him. That's a very 2000s looking dress, like the color and the cut and the beading. Oh God. Here's another picture of them looking very happy together. This marriage lasted a relatively long time when Vajiralongkorn stripped Shrashmi's family members of various titles they had received throughout the marriage. Turns out there was a lot of corruption going on, and various members of the family were arrested and convicted of crimes such as extortion and bribery, along with, of course, lese majeste. The 2010s. Bam! We got some problems. So Vajiralongkorn announces that Shrashmi's family has been engaged in corruption and bribery and lese majeste, of course. And so he strips her family of all of their royal titles. This led Shrashmi and Vajiralongkorn to divorce. months, with Sharashmi being put under house arrest and being denied access to their son from the marriage.
After the divorce, the woman was shaved bald and dressed in monastic robes. She was sent to a distant province and settled in a small cabin with no amenities and no electricity. Inside the house, a toilet and a bathroom were specially destroyed. Now the former princess has to wash herself with rainwater from a barrel and go to the toilet in a drain hole. The servants of the monarch placed a sign over the door with a mocking inscription, "I hope you will be comfortable here as in a palace." In addition, a woman cannot see her own son. These terrible details were once reported by the Bild newspaper. Everyone in the country knew that Maha is a very eccentric monarch, but even from him no one expected such cruelty. In this exhausted, shaved, bald woman, no one can recognize the former princess. Most likely she still continues to live in the same conditions.
But unfortunately, Sharashmi is also a famous Vajiralongkorn wife for a pretty embarrassing reason. We need to talk about the naked dog birthday video. Yeah, obviously not safe for work, but you can watch it if you want. I think that should be pixelated enough for YouTube. But here's a little taster. It's even funnier in video form, I recommend. Let's take a step back, okay? Royal family members love their dogs. Like, I don't know why, cats are so much better, but I don't know, maybe they just love the servile nature of dogs. So Vajiralongkorn had a dog named Fufu. He's like a fluffy white dog, like he literally looks like a Fufu. How do we get to naked dog birthday video? So this is Fufu. Hey, Fufu. Obviously, Vajiralongkorn loves Fufu. And who wouldn't? Fufu was a poodle. He was, in fact, Vajiralongkorn's favorite dog. He adopted Fufu in 1997 when he was about a month old. He loved Fufu so much that he promoted Fufu to Air Marshal in the Royal Air Force. Like, this is some Caligula level shit. Thanks to WikiLeaks documents released in 2009, we now know some other ways that Fufu was a bit spoiled. Namely, in 2007, Vajiralongkorn hosted a birthday party for Fufu. But not only did Fufu have a birthday party, the royal couple decided to celebrate Fufu's birthday with Sharashmi being completely naked, except for a G-string. And when Fufu died, Fufu was cremated and given a public funeral. So Fufu is no joke, okay? Clearly this was not doing Vajiralongkorn's reputation any favors. Not only was his reputation as a weird sex pest solidified, but he was now an heir apparent who was seemingly so out of touch with reality that he would have an extravagant birthday party in his house in Germany for a dog who was also an air marshal. At the same time, WikiLeaks was now reporting that, quote, 3 of the most senior officials close to the king, the former Prime Minister Prem Tinsulanonda, head of the Privy Council, and a former Army General, Anand Panyaranchun, another former prime minister, and Air Chief Marshal Sidi Saitsila were quoted by the new US Ambassador Eric John last January as saying they prefer the king's popular daughter, Princess Shrindhorn, as successor. So now we have 2 sisters that the public is really keen on potentially taking over the throne rather than Vajiralongkorn. Princess Shrindhorn is the 3rd child of King Bhumibol, who had been previously called by the Thai people the Angel Princess due to her sweet nature and all of her charity works. At this point in time as well, Princess Ubal Ratana was back in Thailand, baby. Another thing that happens in the 2000s is Princess Ubal Ratana is back. She returns permanently back to Thailand after her divorce. She doesn't have any of her royal titles really restored, but she continues doing royal duties and charity work and just kind of acting like nothing happened, I guess. After divorcing her foreign husband in 1998, again, royal divorce in the 90s, was just fashionable, I guess, you know? She moved permanently back in 2001 and continued to resume her royal duties and charitable works despite not officially having any royal titles. Her interest in continuing this life of service was a blessing and a curse. On the positive side, she was continuing the work of her father, King Bhumibol, to present the monarchy as focused on development of the country. But on the flip side, she was now showcasing a large gap between what the Thai monarchy could be and what the Thai monarchy was destined to be under Vajiralongkorn's ascent to the throne. Her looking like this and like doing pretty serious like royal engagements and stuff was a little bit of a disconnect from a naked dog birthday video, you know? Any comparison between the siblings, even if barred in the media through lese majeste, was still clearly visible to anybody who had eyes and ears. And with Vajiralongkorn's many scandals now piling up, the Thai people were looking to the other siblings in the family as potentially better candidates for future monarch, which, if you know anything about monarchy, is bad. Because once you start to consider that one person might be a better ruler than another person, it's like, oops, you just invented democracy. When King Bhumibol died in 2016, Thailand went into a period of deep national mourning, which lasted for nearly a year. Having served as king to the Thai people for 70 years, and having projected himself as a near-divine, benevolent leader who ushered in a better, more prosperous Thailand, the sadness at his passing was in some ways very genuine. He had become king at 18 and had served until the age of 88. So WikiLeaks documents later showed that the king had secretly been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and depression in 2011, but even without that information, it was still pretty clear that the king was in declining health. So it wasn't a complete shock when he died on October 13th, 2016, but it definitely hit the Thai people really hard.
His passing comes at a time when the country is once again facing some familiar challenges to its democracy. Increased military control of the political system and ever-growing divisions in Thai society. The late king's only son will be undertaking his father's responsibilities.
And the state went into a year-long mourning. It's not fake. People were really upset. People were out on the streets crying, holding photos of him. This is not fake. Like, these people really believed in his message and his cause, and he was truly beloved. You can see here he had a very elaborate funeral.
Patent victory drummers, 20 silver victory drummers, and 20 gold victory drummers.
But with the grief of Bhumibol's passing came another realization. Vajiralongkorn was now king, King Rama X. And despite all of the lese majeste laws trying to quell dissent, it didn't mean there were no rumblings among the Thai people that they were not entirely enthused with their new king. And the new Rama X didn't seem too interested in drumming up enthusiasm for his reign.
And the Prime Minister, the junta leader, already announced that he was going to nominate the Crown Prince. It was just a formality, and later that night the Crown Prince would become king. This is all thrown into confusion because the Crown Prince then said, well, he wasn't ready, he wants to grieve. For some reason, he wanted to delay. So there's been a long interregnum, which has actually been unprecedented in Thai history.
It sounds like he's been sitting back in Germany having a think about whether he should do it or not.
Well, my impression is that that was never the reason for the delay. He's always wanted to be king. He hates the traditional ceremonies and that aspect of the job, but he always wanted the power. And it seems to me that maybe one of the reasons he's behaving in this way is to actually establish that he can't be bossed around by the junta or anybody, that he's going to do things on his timetable and not on their timetable.
And that's a good point you make, because there was that speculation whether they would try and circumvent his father's wishes that he did ascend to the throne because they were concerned about his character and about how he may rule. So this perhaps gives him the upper hand going forward.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about succession struggle, including by me. I mean, I was one of those who argued, and I believe there's strong evidence, that a large section of the Thai elite especially, and a lot of ordinary Thai people, they don't want Vajiralongkorn as their king, and they were hoping that something could be done to stop it. But in the end, the current junta made the decision when they did the coup in 2014, they were going to go with the prince. And so no one had the power to stop him.
Now, firstly, since about 2007, Vajiralongkorn had not been living full-time in Thailand. He spent, and still spends, the majority of his time in Bavaria, in Germany. We gotta talk about crop top gate. So at this point, Vajiralongkorn is pretty much living permanently in Bavaria. So he's not in Thailand very often. He comes for like ceremonies and royal engagements and stuff, but he's pretty much permanently in Germany. And some photos and videos surface of the prince sporting crop tops while he walks around in Germany. There's one famous video of him walking through a mall with an unknown woman. And it was also a little bit of a scandal as well because it showed that the future king, well, actually the current king, it's 2017, so he's technically the king. It showed that he had many visible tattoos. This was a little bit shocking. It's not like uncommon in Thailand to have tattoos, but I think like people were kind of shocked at how like in your face the tattoos are. From like a Thai cultural perspective, they kind of look a little bit, mafia-ish. That's just kind of like a bad blip on his image. We're gonna get here, but like Thais memeing the crop top in protest is hilarious. One thing that bhumibol did well in trying to reboot the monarchy was to stop the appearance that royals were reigning over Thailand from abroad. But with Vajiralongkorn having studied abroad for most of his life and then later returning to live abroad full time, it seemed clear that Vajiralongkorn was happy to reverse this type of progress with the royal family's image. King Rama X was officially coronated in 2019, but before his coronation, something unprecedented in Thai political history happened. Princess Ubol Ratana decided to announce her candidacy for prime minister. So as we said before, King Bhumibol's death set about a whole year-long mourning process. So King Rama X was not actually coronated until 2019. Now, 2019 is a little bit of a crazy year. One, right before the coronation, Ubol Ratana announces her candidacy for prime minister. So she announces that she's running. She submits all her paperwork. Here's a picture of that paperwork. And Vajiralongkorn goes on TV and basically says that her running is, quote, inappropriate. And the election commission disqualifies her from running.
On this channel, we've reported, obviously, in recent years about the demise of Yingluck Shinawatra, for instance, and before that, her brother Thaksin.
That's correct. I mean, both Thaksin and Yingluck were democratically elected, but the royalist establishment and the military refused to accept her because they regard them as unacceptable. So what we saw in the last few days was another effort by Thaksin to try to come back into Thai politics. And he even enlisted a member of the royal family, Princess Ubonrat. But the Thai king said very sternly on Friday evening that his sister is not allowed to take part in Thai politics. So it's another effort by the monarchy and the military to shut down democratic politics in Thailand.
This was the first time in the history of the Thai royal family that any royal family member had ever run for any other type of political office. Within hours of her announced candidacy, King Rama X addressed the nation and declared that her running for office was, quote, inappropriate. The move caused the election commission to disqualify Ubol Ratana from running at all. But Rama X was not just interested in quashing the political opposition of his extremely popular sister. He was also interested in doing what he did best: having complicated relationships with women. 3 days before his coronation in May 2019, Rama X married his fourth wife, Suthira Tijai, who had previously worked as a flight attendant and then as a royal bodyguard. They had been romantically linked since around 2010, when Vajiralongkorn was still married to Shrashmi, but of course, lese majeste had meant Thai media had not reported on it. Vajiralongkorn announces that he is marrying a former flight attendant and royal bodyguard named Suthira. Here she is here in her like little bodyguard uniform. Here's her flight attendant uniform. So yeah, Suthira is going to be Queen Suthira. That's exciting. I don't think people were expecting that. So then 3 days later is his coronation, and it's pretty ballin'.
ประชาชนชาวไทยทุกคนได้ตั้งความปรารถนาร่วมกันกับข้าพเจ้าในอันที่จะร่วมกันปฏิบัติงานตามฐานะและหน้าที่ของตนโดยยึดเอาประโยชน์คือความเจริญมั่นคงของประเทศชาติและความผาสุกร่มเย็นของประชาชนเป็นเป้าหมายสูงสุด
Look at that. He gets to wear this little, like, it kind of looks like a cowboy hat, but for the king. Here we go. Him hanging out with his new wife. 3-day long ceremony. It was pretty intense. Based on the timing, this now meant that Suthira was now going to become Queen Suthira. However, the sense of relative normalcy couldn't last, because in July 2019, Rama X announced that Sininat Wongvajrapakdi, a former nurse and army officer, would become an official concubine to the king. Another character. Sininat Wongvajrapakdi. So she's a former nurse and an army officer, a pilot. She wasn't very well known before. We can see here though, she looks kind of badass. She's wearing like her military helmets and stuff. But yeah, in July 2019, so right after the coronation, King Rama X announces that Sininat is an official royal consort. This was the first time in nearly a century that Thailand had royal consorts, like official royal consorts. Here we see like their little consort photo, like their official, what do you even call it when you take a photo to announce you're a consort? Here's her official concubine photo, I guess. Here she is here. Though concubines in the Thai monarchy were not unusual in earlier periods of Thai history, this was the first time in nearly 100 years that a Thai king had an official mistress. With every scandal the king had previously had with women, this move played into nearly every single negative aspect of his reputation and reversed a lot of the previous work of bhumibol to portray the royal family as a normal nuclear family. Gone were the days where the royal family was a husband and a wife and a couple of kids. Rama X was bringing back old-fashioned ideas of a Siamese ruler with a harem of women and no interest in the governance of his people. Well, at least for a few months, because in October 2019, what do you think happened? Literally almost immediately in October 2019, Vajiralongkorn announces that Sininat's titles have all been stripped because she disrespected the queen, and then she basically is disappeared for like a year.
According to the Daily Mail, the girl spent almost a year in prison and her family's house was destroyed.
Of course, King Rama X stripped Sininat of all of her royal and military titles. The king cited that she had tried to put herself above the queen and disrespected her in some way. And Sininat then disappeared for nearly a year. As of September 2020, however, everyone seems to have made up, as Sininat has had all of her titles restored, and a royal edict proclaimed that she had, quote, never been a tarnished person.
Sininat's pardon comes at a precarious time in Thailand. The country's youth are protesting against the unbridled power of the king. Student leaders are demanding reforms to the monarchy. They say the king's wealth is not his personal wealth. This includes his Playboy mansion in Germany, where he has been isolated with 20 concubines. And now he will be reunited with his royal consort, Sininat.
But it just shows yet again that Vajiralongkorn is definitely a little bit of a loose cannon. One more thing I want to clown on King Rama X for, because I'm going to Thai prison anyway, is why did nobody in the palace steam the tablecloths in his official portrait? Like, this portrait is everywhere in Thailand, and I just cannot stop noticing the creases in the tablecloths that they clearly pulled right out of the plastic packaging. Like, you are the monarch. Like, surely you can get a steamer, right? He probably wasn't in Thailand long enough to think about that.
The demonstrators have three key demands. They want Prayut to resign as Prime Minister and a new, more democratic constitution. They also want reform of Thailand's powerful monarchy.
มาดูแลกันหน่อยยังไงเราก็คนประเทศเดียวกันเราพูดภาษาเดียวกันเรากินข้าวสารเหมือนกัน
Thailand is in the grip of a youthful uprising, informed and mobilized through social media, taking the Hunger Games salute as their own symbol of defiance.
What we're seeing now is not unprecedented in this respect. What is unprecedented is that monarchic reform is part of the manifesto of the current movement. This is unprecedented.
Royalism has passionate adherents in Thailand, and they've been mobilizing. Over the past 4 years, 9 activists have disappeared. The bodies of 2 were discovered in the Mekong River.
แต่คนไทยเราได้เห็นอะไรในสิ่งที่ไม่เคยเกิดขึ้นมานานนะครับตั้งแต่ต้นปีที่ผ่านมานี่เราได้เห็นนักศึกษาหลายสถาบันลุกขึ้นมาแสดงพลังจัดการชุมนุมตามสถานศึกษา
Wearing yellow is a way to symbolize you back the monarchy. And wearing red, like in these protests from 2010,
in astrology, red is inauspicious to people born on a Monday. So red is actually in antithesis with yellow, therefore with the previous monarch and this monarch.
เรียกว่าการปกป้องสถาบันด้วยกฎหมายแบบนี้มันเป็นหลักสากลในทุกๆประเทศที่มีประมุขแห่งรัฐที่เป็นพระมหากษัตริย์ผมเชื่อว่าถ้าคนอังกฤษไปด่าองค์ควีนอลิซาเบธด้วยภาษาแบบนี้ว่าติดคุกไปนานแล้ว
But that's just not true, because in Britain you can say pretty much what you want about the Queen and you won't go to prison. It's very different from the situation here in Thailand.
คือเอาง่ายๆเรามองถึงหลักการที่เขากระทำถามว่าเขาสมควรไหมที่จะใช้คำหยาบขนาดนี้แบบต่อเนื่องแม้แต่คนไทยส่วนใหญ่ยังรับไม่ได้เพราะเอางี้เราไม่ต้องมาดูว่าช่วงเวลาคุณจะติดคุกนานเท่าไหร่อันนั้นไม่เป็นไรแต่ถามว่าอย่างนี้สมควรไหมที่เกิดขึ้นในประเทศอังกฤษ
Now, I think we can all relate somewhat, but COVID was a massive breaking point for, well, everyone in the world. Thailand's early response to COVID was well praised and effective at stopping the spread in a country that could be very vulnerable with its lack of adequate healthcare, especially in certain rural areas. But despite this, the military junta running the show and the king off in Bavaria hiding away with his wife and concubine was still not a great look to the Thai people. Student protesters seized on the opportunity to criticize the government and, by extension, the monarchy. Since 2014, the military government, as you can imagine, was beginning to become quite unpopular. Though they held general elections in 2019, they were pretty universally called unfair. They were held using new rules drafted in the military's new constitution, which gave them an overwhelming advantage in who would be prime minister.
Let's start with this delay of the announcement of these results. What is behind that?
Well, I mean, this is just another episode of electoral irregularities that we experienced over the past months. The context of the election commission is that they have to make sure that the junta party wins the election. And so for the past 2-3 months, there have been a lot of creation of uneven playing field, if you like. And they've been bashing the opposition parties at the same time, allowing the junta party to do whatever they can do to take the advantage.
Okay, so as far as you are clear in your own mind that these irregularities are deliberate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about this very calmly and without emotion, the idea of this election being stolen. Is that because you're a political scientist? Do regular Thais look at this and know which way it's going to go and know that it's all just an illusion?
This is emotional. The whole election is very emotional for Thais. I mean, I have to sort of suppress my anger because this is international, but it's very emotional. The society has been divided, and the election shows that division. Basically, this is the ideological vote. You have half of the country that has voted for the Democratic camp, and the rest of the country has opted for the conservative camp, if you like. And of course, the half of this country feels that the election is not fair, first of all, but also they feel that they are defeated and there's no change. The election doesn't deliver change.
Right. What do you find that it was the most standout outcomes from the elections yesterday?
I think the consensus among the analysts is that really it was about Future Forward Party hitting something like 80 seats. No one expected them to be winning that many seats. They won some constituency seats as well. And you were on the ground talking to young people.
Yes.
And many of them were Future Forward supporters.
Yeah, definitely. So for a lot of the young voters, especially first-time voters that I've talked to, they have been growing up under the military rule. They are attracted to the fresh outlooks and policies of the Future Forward Party, and of course, because they're new actors, you know, they're definitely attracted to that.
And King Rama X put out a statement on election night urging the Thai people to elect, quote, good people. During military rule, the use of lese majeste laws against Thai citizens was skyrocketing. And the use of the laws in these ways began to get Thais to question how the government was using them to punish any political critiques or jokes, even the most mild. Two, with COVID being such a scary time, especially for Thailand, a country which relies so heavily on tourism for its GDP, King Rama X, ruling from afar in Germany, was starting to look pretty problematic. How could he and the government be trusted to manage COVID when the king would never be affected by it? On top of that, the mere fact that the king had the finances to fuck off to Germany, while thousands of Thais were newly unemployed or managing struggling businesses, and yet could also be severely punished for speaking up about their struggles by questioning the government's decisions, was probably infuriating more and more Thai young people. The king, who had now received from the government personal ownership of the royal assets that used to be owned by the government, was now valued at over $40 billion. Okay, so since I just threw out that number, and I know this might be a bit of a downer, but I just want to address a huge elephant in the room. Get it? Because Thailand. Sorry for the humor. I'm just trying to cope before we go into the next pretty depressing topic. We need to talk about Thailand's poverty. According to the World Bank, quote, Thailand has made remarkable progress in reducing poverty from 58% in 1990 to 6.8% in 2020, driven by high growth rates and structural transformation. However, 79% of the poor remain in rural areas and mainly in agricultural households, according to a rural income diagnostic launched by the World Bank. According to the Borgen Project's 5 Facts About Poverty in Thailand, quote, poverty is on the rise in Thailand. In 2015, the poverty rate was just 7.2%. This figure has risen to almost 10%. That amounts to 2 million more people living beneath the poverty line, a substantial increase in only a few years. The rise in poverty does not occur in only a few of the country's regions. Since 61 out of 77 provinces have seen a rise in poverty, one cannot attribute the current situation regarding poverty in Thailand to one specific community or circumstance. It is a widespread problem with profound implications for the livelihood of all Thai people. Another quote, environmental disasters have pushed more Thai people into poverty. Agriculturists, who make up 31.8% of the workforce, are already a poor group in the country, but the recent droughts in the past year have impoverished them even more. This combination of economic and environmental factors pushes farmers into even more poverty. Droughts are not the only natural disaster devastating the country. The floods and tsunamis that hit the country throughout the 2000s perpetuated even more poverty in Thailand. These natural disasters are inevitable, yet the lack of safety nets in the country is damaging the livelihoods of farmers. And yet another quote, one of the demographics that poverty affects the most in Thailand is children. As of 2012, 7% of the children weighed in as underweight and 16% experienced stunting, impaired physical or psychological development due to a lack of nourishment during adolescence. The severe lack of resources could greatly impair future generations in the country. According to UNICEF, quote, despite a series of positive measures taken by the government to mitigate its impact, the pandemic has laid bare vulnerabilities and exacerbated inequalities. Families with children have been hit hardest and are more likely to face a higher cost of living and loss of income. Recent higher food and energy prices are worsening the situation and slowing down the gains that Thailand has made in its poverty reduction and human capital investment. According to the National Economic and Development Council, in 2021, the poverty rate among children stood at 9.9%, which is significantly higher than that of the overall population at 6.3%. I'm showing these clips of Thai life from the earliest footage to now, and in some of the poorest places, things have changed very little. That's not to say that there has been no economic growth in Thailand. Many Thais have been lifted out of generational poverty. Some good has definitely been done, but with $40 billion, all Thais could have access to a much more comfortable life. This is not just the current king. This is all kings. Past, present, and future. I remember I was reading a book with a handful of 4th grade Thai ESL students. A couple of them were on scholarships, living miles away from their homes, where they were coming from abject poverty and backgrounds with interrupted schooling. The book was If the World Were 100 People by Jackie McCann. It's a book about statistics, basically. Up-to-date facts about the world, but well illustrated and in easy-to-understand language for children. One page said that if the world were 100 people, one person would have half the money on earth. They looked shocked. They had seen extreme poverty, and now that they were going to a private school, they saw some people with big money, kids with parents that had more money than me for sure, but as kids, they didn't know there were bigger, more powerful actors out there. Ironic, isn't it? When they see and show reverence to the king's image every single day, but yet they still could never imagine $40 billion. They could not imagine there could be, or in fact, that there is one person who could solve many of the obstacles in the cycle of poverty that is a fact of their life. But just knowing that one fact made them think about the injustice. And that was the same thought of injustice that started the protests in the first place, and that will continue to stir the imagination of Thai people to foresee a future that is fair and democratic for all. Third, since King Rama X's ascension to the throne in 2017, the 1932 constitutional reforms had been scaled back yet again in a way that gave the king more power. The promises of a constitutional monarchy that would lead to more democracy was just not panning out. The king and the military government seemed to be working together with shared political goals against the Thai people, not working as a checks and balances system on behalf of the Thai people. The final straw was when the government disbanded the Progressive Party, the Future Forward Party, or FFP.
In the 2019 elections, most young Thais supported the Future Forward Party, which came in third after the polls closed. But in February 2020, a court ordered the party to disband. Judges ruled against its leader, Thanatorn Juangruangruangkit, over charges he had issued an illegal loan to the party. Young Thais who were angry about the ruling were soon protesting on the streets. The demonstrations were interrupted by measures to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, but protesters returned in June after the disappearance of a pro-democracy activist who was living in exile in Cambodia.
This newer party, which had been seen by many young Thais as a light of hope against corruption and despotism, was now a threat to the status quo. The anger of young Thais who had seen firsthand, time and time again, the way Vajiralongkorn acted and behaved, both in his private life and as a political actor, was reaching a breaking point. And so, protest. That leads us to the backlash. I love this sign. 2020 is a bad year, but Thai politics is worse. Oof. Let's look at all these pictures here. I just love looking at signs from protests. This one says the owner of this country is all Thai citizens, not military dictatorship. Based. Here we've got some monks protesting. That's usually surprising. Oh, here we are at the Democracy Monument again. People protesting. Oh, here's crackdowns, releasing gas on protesters. This one, where is my freedom? Where are my rights? We need real democracy. No military monarchy government. A lot of Thai citizens talking about people who have disappeared for speaking out against the government. Oh, we got an LGBTQ pride flag. Awesome. This one's really great too. This is a picture of what says on it, letter to the embassies, why Thai monarchy must be reformed. 1, ambiguous status. 2, being used as an instrument for the advantage of certain groups. 3, being used as a justification for enacting draconian laws. 4, excessive budget and servants. 5, undemocratic and unequal institution. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thailand does not belong to the king. We won't be blinded by your PR team no more. And held up by a monk? Like, that's based. You might have noticed as well, like a big theme from these protests was the use of like the 3-finger salute from the Hunger Games became sort of symbol of the movement. You can't kill us all. They will not force us. They will stop degrading us. They will not control us. We will be victorious. Look at that. This is the song of angry people. True. Very true. And what's really amazing, I think, about this protest in particular is look at the type of media attention that this protest was able to get. Not only because it was happening during COVID, but also because the technology has advanced so far and there's more people able to take photos. Everyday people have cameras. They can take photos and show these protests in a way that when we looked at some of these protests during bhumibol's reign, I found it very difficult to find a lot of pictures of these types of things, probably because they've been suppressed by the government. Of course, this type of protest was not very welcome by the government. Using COVID as an excuse, the government tried to squash protests through restrictions on gatherings and public assembly, calling a public state of emergency, as well as using lese majeste to arrest any who were clearly vocal against the monarch. Police also used water cannons against protesters to get them to disperse. The government also began ruling in legal cases that any criticism or, quote, attempt to overthrow the monarchy was unconstitutional. Unfortunately, though previous government response to COVID had been swift and effective, future waves of the virus throughout 2021 and 2022 were more severe. Thailand was not prepared for quick vaccine rollout. Though the government had bought thousands of doses of Sinovac, it was not enough to immunize the majority of the population. And as more waves of COVID swept through Thailand, it became more unmanageable, with the government's crackdowns on protesters and new spikes of COVID leading to worse public health outcomes. The protests fizzled out, and none of the demands of the movement were met. It seems a bit like gilding the lily at this point to explain the direct comparisons between the two royal families, but I might as well highlight some of the biggest ones. 1. The reigns of King Rama IX and Queen Elizabeth II were very similar in how they portrayed the family. The focus on public works, the image of a small nuclear family with 4 children, and the use of media to propagate its image, it's all just so similar. They also both had extremely long reigns, which went a long way in establishing them as sort of constants in daily life. They both grew up in front of their subjects in a way that somewhat endeared them to the public, even when the political situations themselves were uneasy. 2, we can all agree, the parallels between King Charles and King Rama X are kind of stunning. Yes, Charles has only had 1 divorce in which he manipulated his ex into silence, but once is definitely enough, right? Plus marrying the mistress right after is just right on the nose. If King Charles could get away with having an official concubine, I wouldn't put it past him. They also have sisters who they are compared to regularly. Charles has complained in the past that he was always compared to Princess Anne, who to this day tries to portray herself as the most hardworking royal. This seems incredibly analogous to how Princess Ubal styled herself with the Thai public. What I'm trying to say is the sibling rivalry is definitely there in both families. 3, both monarchies have had an obsession with trying to figure out how to modernize. How can the concept of monarchy be sold to modern peoples who have greater awareness of the ideals of democracy? Whereas Thailand focused on the idea of modernity, meaning becoming more westernized, Britain has focused on the idea of modernizing, meaning the royal family becomes more celebritized, like they became more celebrity focused. They have also tried to downplay the divine right of kings aspect, but both families struggle to distance themselves from the divinity angle, as it is one of the foundational myths which led to the development of monarchies in the first place. But in a world where we know that King Rama X has had multiple affairs and a naked birthday party for a dog named Fufu, can the Thai people be expected to accept that King Rama X is nearly a Buddha? In a world where we know that King Charles has had an affair and contemplated the idea of being a tampon, can the British people be expected to accept that he is now the head of the Church of England? Like, it's a hard sell. Finally, both royal families have a somewhat complicated relationship to media. Whereas lese majeste laws in Thailand seem to be the leading way in which the monarchy tries to protect its reputation by outright banning any negative coverage or comments about the family, the British royal family instead has used media manipulation through its connections to the press to encourage positive coverage of the most valuable members of the royal family, the monarch, and those who are destined to be monarchs. But potentially that could be changing, which leads us to...
It's not fair, I'm just a normal taxpayer. And in a couple years, do it all again for the guy with no hair. Coronation costs us 100 mil. Thousands of people can't even afford a meal. Call me
I had 1, 2, 3, 4 officers come around me, demand to see my sign. What's on the other side? What does it mean? Why am I here?
Public nuisance will be a new offence, carrying a maximum penalty of up to 10 years in prison.
Rights groups have denounced the UK government's plans to make more types of protests illegal.
But today, the government backed the police using new powers, given just days before the king was crowned.
Guys, you know you better watch out, 'cause it's a free country unless you shout, my king, my king, my king.
Any criminal offence being committed? No. But why are you here bothering us? I'm sorry you feel that I'm bothering you. You are. Yeah.
Seems like something oddly familiar is going on. Remember when I told you about lese majeste? Remember when I said the Thai monarchy began to quash democratic dissent through outlawing protest and criticism of the royal family? Well, it seems to be happening in the United fucking Kingdom. Emphasis on the king.
There's these dignitaries in these sort of ceremonial outfits. They proclaimed Charles to be our only rightful lord and king. And I found that pretty hard to stomach. So I called out who elected him. The new head of state's being imposed without our consent. You know, we shouldn't be bowing down to him. And then security guard appeared, stood right in front of me, like nose to nose. And then the police interrupted, grabbed hold of me. They handcuffed me, they put me in the back of a police van, said they were arresting me.
I'd heard about protesters being arrested for expressing peaceful anti-monarchy sentiment, and I wanted to protest that issue of freedom of expression. So I went down with a blank A3 sheet, said nothing, and just stood there outside Parliament. And then I started walking around with it, and at that time a policeman came up to me.
You said you're going to write stuff on it that may offend people.
I said I was going to write "Not My King" on a sign, and you asked for my details.
It may offend someone.
Who's that going to offend? And I said, you know, I actually would like to have "Not My King" written on this sign. Is that allowed? Will you arrest me if I write that? And he said, yeah, probably yes, because it's offensive and therefore against the Public Order Act.
Disgusting! Wait, I've done nothing wrong.
We were going to appear in yellow, so we made ourselves known. We gave a place where we were going to be. We told them exactly what we were going to do. They'd okayed it, and okayed it all the way up until the day before. Essentially, a peaceful demonstration has been attacked under the guise of authoritarian draconian laws. That's what's happened here.
And that was before the coronation.
Yeah, this was before.
But it wasn't just protesters caught up in arrests. Documentary maker Rich Felgate was filming activists in Whitehall when he was arrested, then held for 18 hours without explanation.
I showed the police my press accreditation immediately, but they still proceeded to arrest me. I think it's kind of a recipe for disaster when police are given such wide-ranging powers with the new public order bill, if you cycle to a protest and have a bike clock, then you could be arrested.
But the talk of the town really, Sanjay, has been the kind of protest that we saw and the handling of that happened as well. There were several arrests that were made. The government came out and defended the action and the arrests that were made. But we're given to understand that Scotland Yard and the UK police are facing some sort of backlash over this.
Well, certainly they are, because there are very disturbing aspects to this. We had a Public Order Act that was rushed through and approved just days before this coronation. And of course, it was well known that there would be people coming out to protest. The fact is, they were not even allowed to begin their protest. They were arrested just as they were beginning to gather to say whatever they had to, and this was peacefully. Nobody alleges, not even the police, that they were turning violent.
The British monarchy has known since about 1700s or so that enforcing any kind of lese majeste laws related to mockery or critique of the family was ill-advised. Clearly, Spitting Image wasn't being taken off the air, you know?
Mum, I'm just going to say it. We're concerned about the way the firm is being run.
Fuck off. The British sense of biting, crass humor cannot be contained by any law. But allowing some ugly puppets to joke about the royal family shouldn't be the be-all and end-all of legal protections against free speech. Unfortunately, when the criticism seems to be dipping into political action, stirring Republican sentiment, the UK is starting to seem no different from Thailand. The act of speaking up against the monarchy is now in a mushy gray area, where Republican protesters have now seen that police action can be taken against them. This will have the exact same chilling effect that lese majeste laws have always been upheld for, to discourage any sort of political movement against monarchy.
What do you think? Do you think this represents overreach by the police? Do you think? Yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm aware that the police misuse of powers is not a new thing. I think many people are subject to unfair treatment by the police, and many of them, we know all the evidence around that and about racism from the police and so on. I think what we're seeing in the last few days is a real misuse of the situation following the sad death of Elizabeth Windsor last week, whereby people feel grief, they're mourning, and this is being conflated. The grief, which of course I respect, is being conflated with an automatic assumption that we must accept Charles Windsor as the new head of state without discussing it.
For the British public, this should spark outrage. With the transition to King Charles, now is the perfect time for Britain to re-examine its use for a monarchy. And yet the movement is having the wind knocked out of its sails, not through change of thought or opinion from the British public, but through police action.
The principle of hereditary power, I think, is absolutely abhorrent in 2022. You can't have any philosophical or moral justification for one family having political power like that just by virtue of their birth. That's the fundamental issue. If they're symbolic, then there's no point having them. If they have political power, then they shouldn't be there.
It's disgusting again how, the kind of news of the royal family completely overtakes the news agenda, and everything else that is affecting millions of regular people in this country is being swept under the carpet. We have royal family who are multi-millionaires and have a massive PR machine, and then we have regular people who will freeze this winter, and this is completely not being talked about.
We don't know what he does with it. He gets a £24 million a year salary. That's more than 1,000 times the average British wage. And for what? Waving and shaking hands, and his hidden power to change laws. Let's not forget that he can change laws behind the scenes before they're passed by the Parliament to his own financial and personal advantage.
And it's not about I don't like Charles because he's rich. I genuinely could not care less about him and his personal life. But I do care about how we set up our systems. I'm a politics student, and
For sure.
and what we learn about is how the structure of our politics influences the policies. If we had a constitution in the UK, then we could better protect against all of those issues, like the climate crisis, like the cost of living crisis, because they would be embedded in an actual democratic system.
It's about saying, look, this isn't radical, it's just about democratic reform, and what we say and the way we view the monarchy and democracy actually fits with most people's values, and the monarchy doesn't.
How big of a moment is this for the Republican movement in the UK?
I think there is a wider cultural shift which we are fitting into, and it is making the ground much more fertile for us to expand, and I think that is starting to happen. I think the coronation and people seeing that big protest will boost that enormously.
If King Charles were an absolute monarch, quelling of protests at his coronation would perhaps have set off more alarm bells, more similar to the world's reaction to the 2020 Thai student protests. The British propaganda, which encourages British citizens to see the monarchy not as a part of the government, but as some caged zoo animals, seems to cloud the perspective of many. Instead of seeing this as a government head of state potentially crushing dissent to his rule, Brits seem instead to think that the protesters at these events are simply unruly killjoys, as if protesting King Charles were the equivalent of shouting at Kim Kardashian on the runway. But the British royal family, despite their intense focus on PR, is not a celebrity family. They are a governmental system, and crushing any sort of political speech through police action should be bad. Like, maybe I'm just too American for this conversation, but political speech to me is sacred, and any government action to interrupt it is morally reprehensible. We can't know for sure that police actions against Republican protesters was encouraged by King Charles himself, but what I can say is that he doesn't seem to have made any comments against it. Not that I would expect that from a king, but when the political implications of this crushing of anti-monarchist protest are that lese majeste could take hold in Britain, I think the king and the UK government as a whole should be invested in ensuring the public that this is not a path that Britain wants to go down. But based on how the government is continuing to legislate how protests can be carried out in the UK.
People have been rallying in cities across the UK to protest against a new bill they say is an attack on the right to demonstrate. The controversial Police and Crime Bill would grant police greater powers to crack down on disruptive protests, but critics say it will also make it more difficult to hold peaceful demonstrations.
And I believe that some of the provisions in that bill will severely limit the sorts of things that we're able to do to protest.
The tone was calm in central London as hundreds marched to make their point, exercising their right to protest, which they believe will be restricted under proposed police powers.
Most of the positive change that's happened in this country has been brought about by people protesting.
Blocking traffic is disruptive, and none of us want to be disruptive. Like I said, we're not doing this because it's fun. But what is going to be way more disruptive are the effects of climate breakdown.
Those here feel the bill is totally unreasonable because it punishes non-violent protesters.
That is draconian, absolute draconian power. The government we've got now is to the right of Bolsonaro and to the right of the fascist government we got in Italy. I mean, people have to wake up and see what's happening.
They either do not seem to recognize or do not care that they are creating a Britain that is turning its back on democratic ideals that Thai protesters only a couple years ago were declaring on the streets of Bangkok. What's also uncomfortable about the current state of affairs is that the royal family, the press, and the current conservative government all seem to be on one side, on the side of capitalism and greed. While us Westerners can point to the obvious corruption of the Thai monarchs, the governments that they collaborate with, and the business interests that they hold, the British royal family and government has placed themselves in the same precarious position.
Britain's utter hypocrisy on public protests. The security minister has defended this new law. He says it won't curb demonstrations. Listen to this. Anti-monarchists would still have the liberty to protest, but they would not have the liberty to disrupt others. That's where we are drawing a difference. So putting reasonable restrictions on protests is not really wrong. I underline the word reasonable. But Britain was not so understanding when protests happened elsewhere. You may remember the farmer protests in India. One of the key roads near the national capital was blocked. What was Britain's response then? They decided to debate the issue in the House of Commons. British MPs criticised India's handling of the protests. The year was 2021. Now imagine the opposite happening. Imagine the Indian Parliament debating Britain's new anti-protest law, or Indian MPs defending the rights of Republican protesters. It won't happen because it's absurd.
However, instead of using lese majeste, the royal family now has control of a handful of tabloids, which they can use not only to prop up their own image, but their political ideas, and shift the Overton window and political narratives to suit their capital interests. This is a dangerous road to go down. Politics run by a cult of personality who has the ability to meddle in a free press by encouraging right-wing media organizations to flood the discourse with conspiracy and conservative talking points? Seems pretty Trumpian to me.
In the Republic, the first thing, the most important thing that I think that I never want to go back to the constitutional monarchy is that the Republic, the Democratic Republic, means that everyone was born free and equal. Like that, how can we accept the people of, or some group of people who were born like us, who were born from the vagina, from the penis, from the sperm, like us, to be above, to be higher than the ordinary people like us? We are all equal, and how can we put ourselves like this in this kind of status? For me, ideologically, it is important and necessary and moral to change the regime to be republic, and it must be democratic republic by the people and with the election. People have to be guaranteed that they have freedom. It's a new thing that Thailand cannot imagine. Oh, how can we change the definition of nation, king, nation, religion, and king to be freedom, equality, and fraternity.
If Britain wants to retain a democracy, I believe it should look to the struggles of the Thai people. As much as I'd like to believe that the British monarchy will not consolidate its power through cracking down on dissent, it seems like the British government is opening up the doors for that type of behavior. Though I can't imagine King Charles will be able to change the British Constitution in such a way as to become a quasi-dictator in the way that King Rama X has. Do we really want to leave that possibility open? Do we want that to become an option, that lese majeste will return to the British Isles and eliminate the necessary checks and balances in the system to ensure that democracy flourishes? Personally, I don't want that to happen. And as an American, I feel like it is my duty to uphold democratic ideals and to call out governments around the world that claim that they are democracies when they are actually walking away from all of the ideals of democracy itself. I know it might seem like it's just a silly little thing to talk about monarchy, but when monarchy is a part of the government, it is our duty to not just look at the drama and intrigue, but to think about the political implications of having a monarchy in the modern era, and how things that we take for granted with these constitutional monarchies can be slowly stripped away. I believe now is the time to truly question, should the UK have a monarchy? And the answer is no, obviously. Maybe to British people this isn't obvious, but to me it's like, yes, obviously you shouldn't have a monarchy. And that's my hot take. Okay, we're done. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out in the Catella bubble with me today. I hope you learned a lot. I hope it made you think about a lot more ideas related to monarchy. And thus concludes my Harry and Meghan 3-story series. Yay! Don't forget, if you like this video, leave a comment, like it, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts on the monarchy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!